Why didn't the British support a constitutional monarchy in France, similar to their own, as a counterweight to Prussia, Austria, and Russia, which did threaten British control of Hanover? Did the Poles actually have a chance to survive as a state? Why are the French constantly revolting? These and other questions will be answered right after this. I'm Professor Jerome Arkenberg, and I've been teaching a wide variety of history courses at colleges across this country for the past 30 years. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the French Constitution of 1791, the emergence of the first French political parties, how Prussia and Austria doomed any chance of avoiding a bloody radical revolution in France, and how a revolution in Poland saved the revolution in France. At the end, I'll have the wrap-up quote on this video. But first, make sure to click like, share, especially subscribe, and that little bell thingy, so I can continue to bring you more great videos just like this one. On September 3rd, 1791, a new constitution was promulgated and France became a constitutional monarchy, with a government consisting of a popular assembly indirectly elected by property-owning citizens who had not fled the country. 2. A constitutional monarch with limited powers. 3. The popular election of all officials, judges, and jurors. 4. Court hearings and trials open to the public. 5. A reorganization of the state into 83 self-governing departments. And 6. A Bill of Rights based on the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. The new Legislative Assembly of 745 members, elected under this new constitution, grouped itself into factions, not yet parties, but they became such, to factions based on membership in various political clubs. The right, and by the way, our idea today of right versus left, leftist versus rightist, comes from where these different parties, these different factions, sat in the National Assembly of France. So on the right was the Constitutionalist, Royalist, and others. In the center, the Plain, an organized group of moderate Republicans and timid monarchists sitting on the floor of the assembly, which is like a giant plane. Further to their left, the Girondins, who wanted a federal republic. And on the far left, sitting high up in the assembly, the Mountain, and hence their name, consisting of radical champions of a united and indivisible republic, and the Jacobins, radical advocates of centralized power who control the masses of Paris through agitation and press propaganda. When Austria and Prussia threatened to restore divine right absolutism in France, the National Assembly declared war, made the Marseillaise its national anthem, and proclaimed the levée en masse to mobilize the entire population for war. By the July of 1792, the Prussians invaded France, and their commander, the Duke of Brunswick, seen here, issued a manifesto ordering the French, to free the king and surrender. Remember, the king was still under arrest in the Tuileries Palace, trying to flee the country. Anyway, to ordering the French to free the king and surrender entirely, which, combined with initial French defeats in the field, many of the officers were émigré were nobility and had fled. The ones left behind were not very good, caused panic to sweep through Paris. Convinced that the king was in league with Prussia and Austria, the Paris mob stormed the Tuileries Palace, massacred its Swiss guards, and seized the king and his family, seen here. The Legislative Assembly then impeached the king and called for elections to write a new constitution, and dissolved itself. In September of 1792, the Jacobin leaders Danton and Marat ordered the prisons cleansed, and some 3,000 so-called counter-revolutionaries were massacred. And after similar acts took place across the country, more émigrés fled the country. But at Valmy, which is not really much of a battle, on September 20th, 1792, the Prussians were stopped and the revolution was saved. Though events in Poland, which occupied the attention of Prussia, Austria, and Russia for the next 3 years, had more to do with this. Yes, the Polish Revolution. For after the first partition of Poland in 1774, the Poles had recognized the need for reform. And in 1791, following the example of both France and Britain, promulgated a constitution eliminating the liberum veto and setting up an hereditary constitutional monarchy. But Poland's nobility, alarmed at a constitution which would strip them of their rights and privileges, formed the Confederation of Targowice in 1792 and betrayed their country by asking the Russians to intervene and restore the status quo ante. Russia obliged, along with Prussia, invaded, deposed King Stanislav III, abrogated the Constitution of 1792, and partitioned Poland for a second time. But in 1794, a revolt led by Tadeusz Kościuszko, who had played a key role in the American Revolution, especially the victory at the Battle of Saratoga, broke out across both free and partitioned Poland. Despite some success, the revolt collapsed with the arrival of a large Russian army. But the revolt distracted the Russians, Prussians, and Austrians, saving the revolution in France, but leading to the third partition of Poland and its disappearance as a state. The wrap-up quote. The city had been a scene of bloodshed and violence without intermission since Sunday noon. And although it is difficult and indeed impossible to ascertain with any precision the number that had fallen victims to the fury of the mob during these 3 days, we believe the account will not be exaggerated when we state it at 12,000 persons. The Princess de Lamballe went down on her knees to implore a suspension of her fate for 24 hours. This was at first granted, until a second mob, more ferocious than the first, forced her apartments and decapitated her. Previous to her death, The mob offered her every insult. Her thighs were cut across and her bowels and heart torn from her. For 2 days, her mangled body was dragged through the streets. The London Times, 1792. Let me know what you think of this quote in the comment section below. Also, what you liked about this video, and what other historical topics or subjects you'd like to see in future videos. Be sure to click like, share, and especially subscribe, as it will help me bring you more great videos. And click on that little bell thingy, so you'll know when the next History Waits for No One video is posted. If you want to know more, there are recommended studies on this topic in the description below, along with other ways to connect with me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the past.